I am an introvert living in an extrovert role.
Raise your hand if this is you. An introvert forced to be an extrovert because of their job.
I'm very good at turning it on when I have to, but my preference is just solitude, just being with one or two people, being home with family. And so I really do need that outlet of just being able to cocoon myself.
When she's not in her cocoon, Joung-ah Ghedini Williams is thriving as the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at the Center for Reproductive Rights. She's also traveling the world and reflecting on her 30-year career with the UN Refugee Agency.
I couldn't believe how many other communicators and people in the marketing and more the external engagement world were classified themselves as introverts. I remember just thinking oh my gosh, the world is not what I thought it was.
I'm Camila Rente, and this is Impact After Hours, a show about pursuing a life of impact on and off the clock. Joung-ah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Camila. I'm really excited for this conversation.
When we first met, you talked about how you like listening to music and painting at the same time. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's how you get into the zone, right? What was the last song that you listened to, and what was the last thing you painted?
Oh, that is a really good question. So I painted just this weekend. I'm going to have to host all of my team members for a retreat in November. So I wanted to do something personal for them. So I was making little inspirational quote watercolors. So I've been doing a little bit of that every weekend, making about 30 of those. And so that was what I painted. And I was listening to the artist Somber.
On this show, we've had a handful. I would say it's a recurring theme that our social impact leaders have these creative outlets. We had Alex Habib, who is the he's the head of sustainability communications at L'Oreal, and he loves photography. He's an avid photographer. We had George McGraw. He loves neon art, and he creates them. So I think it is more common than people think that social impact leaders and change makers are interested in these different types of hobbies and interests. So you're painting, I would say, how often do you paint, Joung-ah, if I may ask? You said regularly?
Yes. So several times a week, even if it's just for a few minutes, I just feel like it helps me center myself, but also, what's been really surprising is I wrote this one LinkedIn post about how I am an introvert living in an extrovert role. And I couldn't believe how many other communicators and people in the marketing and more the external engagement world were classified themselves as introverts. So I think I'm very good at turning it on when I have to, but my preference is just solitude, just being with one or two people, being home with family. And so I really do need that outlet of just being able to cocoon myself. And the painting has really just been a huge gift ever since COVID.
Turning it on when you need to, that's something that resonates with me a lot. I never really, I would say, classify myself as an introvert when I was young, but as I grew older, I really found myself sort of skewing a little bit more introvert. So, there's a lot of environments where I need to be, talking to other people in social impact and, explaining the work that we do. All of those events and opportunities are super important, as you know, but spending time with family, I guess my main hobby is reading, and, it's where I can really kind of decompress and escape for a little while. So, and it's very helpful in many ways, I would say. But before we get into the fun zone, as we say, Joung-ah, you spent nearly 30 years at the UN Refugee Agency. So let that sink in for people who are listening. What inspired you to begin a career in social impact? And, 30 years and going, what has motivated you to stay the course?
It's a good question, and it's a question I ask myself sometimes. I think both of my parents, so my mother is Korean, as is my biological father, but the father I grew up with my entire life is Italian, hence the crazy last name. And both of them were children growing up in post-war countries. So both of them very much instilled into my sister and I this need to, to really be successful in more conventional ways. So I was supposed to be a lawyer. I think my sister was supposed to be a doctor. I don't know, something like that. And I ended up working in humanitarian work, and she works as an event planner and stylist. So completely wrong tracks according to what we probably were expected to do. But I feel that for me, I had a very strong connection with values and principles, and like a sense of wanting to do and speak up for what was right or not. And I think a lot of that had to do with, I was born in Korea, but we moved to New York when I was I was just before I turned 6 years old. And so I went from a very homogenous culture and country with very strict rules of behavior and societal norms. And then I came to Manhattan, and I remember my first day of school, like just being thrown into a public school in New York where everybody looked different. I couldn't understand a word of English. And even then, I remember just thinking like, oh my gosh, the world is not what I thought it was. And I think that just created this drive in me to learn about other people and find a way to connect with them, even if we looked different, came from different backgrounds, spoke different languages. And that kind of stuck with me throughout my life and my career.
So you being an immigrant, you said you moved here at 6, right? Very young, getting exposed to different cultures might have influenced later on what your career would be. And I can so relate to being Filipino. I can so relate to sort of societal standards of there are only a few professions that are maybe considered, stable and will give you financial security and all of those things. My background is in law. So I did that whole circuit, if you will.
Yes.
And later on, when I moved to New York, well, actually, that's the reason why I moved to New York. It's because I really wanted to shift and change the trajectory of my career, and found it here. And, I've been at it ever since. So that story is very familiar to me, Joung-ah. But you've lived in about 15 countries. Am I right about that?
I think so. I stopped counting, but I think so, yes.
And have traveled to about 100.
Yes.
Not that this is happening anytime soon, but like whenever I guess you think about the countries you've been to or where you've spent some time in, like which country makes you think of, like settling there permanently?
Very good question.
Outside of New York.
So there are so many cities that I love. I'm more of a city girl. I love going to the ocean. That's my vacation of choice, but like where I'd want to live is probably a city. But other than New York, I'd say the two places where whenever I land, I feel like I'm home are Bangkok and Nairobi. Like those are the two where I'm like, I could happily live here for the rest of my life. There are lots of places in Europe where I know I would comfortably, happily live, but like those are the two that whenever I go, I'm like, there's something about them where I'm like, yeah, my heart just sings here.
Mm-hmm. And now we sort of segue into you traveling around the world. You have a good, what we call a meet cute story, Joung-ah. So tell us the story of where, how you met your husband. And I know it's a very particular situation because it's related to your work.
Yes. So I was working for the UN Refugee Agency, and I was the spokesperson that was covering the Kosovo war as it was happening, and then after the refugee crisis that impacted the whole region. And I was in Kosovo, in the capital, Pristina, and we were meeting a couple of people after work for dinner because there were only a few places that had generators because the electricity was often out. And one of them was in an office building where they had kind of set up this cafe. And I remember seeing like the outline, the silhouette of something coming towards me. And he was kind of walking in this like very jaunty way. And the work was so grueling and depressing. And I just thought, wow, that's the kind of person I should end up with. And that ended up being my husband. Although in the beginning, we really did not think we were going to be anything. We thought it would be a fling because we were so different. He is English and very English, and I am a very passionate garlic eating Korean Italian at heart. And so we fought like cats and dogs and did not understand each other in the beginning. But here we are. How long have we been together? Since 1999. So 26 years, 2 kids, and how many countries. And yeah, I think we made it through Kosovo, where we started our dating with no water and no electricity, no heat when it was freezing cold. So we kind of were forced to get over the stumbling blocks. I feel like if we had met in New York or London or anywhere else, we would have never lasted. But we were kind of forced to out of needing body heat and company. And we actually know a lot of other couples who have lasted, who met in Kosovo, funny enough.
Okay, so I need to go back to how I phrased this question. I said meet cute. I don't think it's your traditional meet cute story. But in spite of that, I still think like how you described it and how you told it, it still sounded very romantic. Because, it's that sort of thing, right? Like you're meeting your significant other partner for the rest of your life for the first time. Like, the spending the rest of your life with them is not something that you would imagine in that first instance. But then looking back, like it's still an amazing story. I feel like if a movie were made about you, Joung-ah, it would be like there's action, there's romance, right? Food will be involved. But in all your years of working in social impact, what is an act of kindness that you've experienced or you've seen firsthand?
I would say the thing that kept me going with the UN Refugee Agency, because that was really hard work, and it was devastating. There were times where I really did want to quit, and I really felt mentally and emotionally just done. But the people that I have met who, despite having survived unthinkable tragedy and loss, showed such generosity. Like I would meet the number of refugees who opened their homes to me, even if their home was just like a piece of plastic sheeting, and often would like try to share. Like they would have very little food. And like in a lot of the places, like in Bosnia, in Eritrea, in Ethiopia, and Sudan, in Colombia, there's a very strong coffee culture. So they would want to share what little coffee they had. And you would feel so bad because you're like, you have so little, but that connection, that sense of just human kindness, like every time it got to me. And I just felt it just confirmed that we are so much more similar. We have so much more in common And those moments of like sitting and just smiling and laughing with each other. And I still remember, like, if I close my eyes, I see so many of these, particularly women and mothers that I've met who we didn't understand a word of each other's language, but the connection of like with our kids and just what it takes to try to protect your kids and make sure your kids are healthy and safe and have food and have a safe place to live and get an education. Like the connection was just always there. And so that kindness that I was shown in the most unexpected places just will always stay with me.
Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful thing to share, Joung-ah, because I think some people have had similar experiences that you've had where, you go to these places that you've never been and meet people of like culture, they have a different culture, they have a different language, but the fact that they welcome you into your home, to their homes, that speaks volumes about humanity because, flipping that around, right? Like that's not something you would be, so quick to do. Like, here in the city, we live and, like a stranger comes in, right?
Yes.
That would be far from like our instincts, I would say. Like it's not instinctual for us to do that. But you've had that experience and I hope, our listeners and people who are doing this type of work, also still try to find opportunities for that because it really will change your life and perspective about, people and how people live and how people commune with each other. So thank you for that. And, Joung-ah, I am excited to start with a lightning round of seemingly random questions. Are you ready to play?
I am scared but ready.
This round is not meant to scare our guests, but sometimes they do get scared. First off, what is your holy grail self-care item? You don't need to mention a product name.
Oh, that is such a good one because I have so many different things that I use.
Please spill.
Yeah, I would say like I am I'm very proud of my K-beauty, universe. So I would say it's my K-beauty regime.
So for those of you who are not familiar with the K-beauty regime, I am. There's multiple steps. Some might take it to 9 or 10. And also, if you are not watching us or watching this episode, I suggest you go on YouTube so that you can look at Joung-ah, because the first time we met, I have to confess, I already thought that your skin was gorgeous, and I had to ask you that, and I'm glad that question somehow appeared on this list. So there are 9 to 10, right? Is there any item that you maybe even when you're tired you absolutely need to use?
I would say the essentials that I do no matter how tired I am is an oil cleanser, a foaming cleanser, a serum, and a moisturizer. Those are the holy grail for me with the 4. And I think, my mom is 87 and her skin is amazing. So I strongly believe in, even if it takes 5 minutes, you do that for yourself.
Yes. Genetics also play a huge role. As you said, your mom is 87. Okay. We mentioned, I guess I mentioned how much I love books. What is your favorite book genre and why?
Oh, it's changed so much. I always loved kind of historical fiction. But recently, I think because of the state of the world and the pressure of work, I've been reading a lot more fantasy just to get me completely, somewhere else. But I go back and forth between that, but always fiction.
Same. That fiction, popcorn thrillers do it for me. in terms of escapism, like, okay, I know that there's a formula to this, but I need this this day or this weekend because I can't, maybe it's hard to read the news or go on social media. Like I need this escapism. So you, with the nature of your work and also, your background, please correct me if any of these are inaccurate, but you're fluent in English, French, Italian, Korean, and Spanish.
Yes.
Okay. Which of these were the most difficult to learn? And if there was a new language you can learn, which would it be?
French was the hardest. And I have said many times that I wish I knew either Arabic or Chinese.
I have mentioned so many times on this show of, how much I love food. And I want to know, in your opinion, how does Korean food in America compare to food in Korea?
Very good question. I think it depends where. So you can get very good Korean food in New York, for sure. The best, as far as I'm concerned, the best Korean food that I've eaten in the US has been in Los Angeles. And I'm lucky that my family all lived there. It is like the largest diaspora of Koreans in the US. And some of the food there rivals, or in a few cases, I would say even is better than what you find in Korea. However, you can't beat like the freshness and the variety and the prices in Korea. So that's it. So you'll never have the same experience as you do in Korea, but you could get pretty close in certain dishes.
And what's a dish that takes you back to your childhood?
Ooh, this is gonna sound, for anyone who has watched any K-drama, you will see that everyone eats. And like, unlike on American TV, like Korean actors are shoveling food into their mouths. And that's how we eat. We genuinely eat. And there has never been a K-drama show, or even recently this K-pop Demon Hunters phenomenon, like they were eating the instant noodles, the ramyeon. That is my go-to, that is my comfort food.
We ask every guest this question, which is, what is your go-to after-hours media? What have you been watching, reading, or listening to lately?
Yeah, so I am, it's funny because I find a lot of comfort in rewatching certain things too. So my husband always knows if he comes home and he sees me watching Roman Holiday, he's like, oh, was it a bad day? And I'll just be like, yes. And so that's not something I'm watching every day, but that's my comfort go-to movie. And I do find, and I think there are some studies that show that rewatching things is actually good for your nervous system. So I do rewatch a lot of my favorite older movies and movies that I find really comforting.
I completely agree. Joung-ah, we have come to the end, but before we let you go, is there anything that you want to share with our listeners? Any final message or anything big that's coming up for you in the organization?
I think just maybe this has been so much fun. It's just really nice to just talk about things that are outside of the normal type of interview that I do. But I would say, times are so tense for everyone these days and things feel so uncertain. So whatever we can do to really help take care of ourselves, that actually does help us take care of others and be kinder in general. So I would also say, my watercolors or my Korean beauty regimen or whatever it is that people do, it's not a selfish act. If anything, it allows you to feel better and more supported and more taken care of so that you can go out and whatever your personal fight is, take that on with a little bit more strength and grounding every day. So I would say, everybody, please take care of yourselves and be kind to yourself and speak to yourself in the way that you would talk to your child or your best friend or your mom, because sometimes we can be quite harsh with ourselves.
I 100% agree. Thank you, Joung-ah. Thank you for spending time with me. I will continue to ask you about Korean restaurant recommendations, books, all of that. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Camille. And thanks for having me on. And anytime you want any recommendations, I'm your girl.